Ever wish you had like a cheat sheet for understanding people?
You mean like a guide to navigating all those tricky social situations?
Yeah, exactly. And guess what? There actually is one.
Oh, you're talking about how to win friends and influence people.
That's the one. It's a classic for a reason.
It really is. Dale Carnegie was ahead of his time.
Totally. Some of it might seem kind of old school at first glance.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It was written almost 100 years ago.
Right, back in 1936 to be exact.
But honestly, so much of it is still surprisingly relevant today.
Yeah, I was amazed by how much of it still holds true. Like even in our crazy digital world.
It's all about those timeless principles of human interaction. They never really go out of style.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to dive into today. We're going to unpack those principles, see how they work, and figure out how we can use them to improve our own lives.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome. So Dale Carnegie, he started out as a lecturer, right?
Yeah, he actually developed this material from his courses on public speaking and human relations.
Makes sense. And his whole goal was to give people practical tools for building better relationships.
Absolutely, whether it's in business, personal life, or just everyday interactions.
And he covers a lot of ground, right?
Oh, yeah, he dives into all sorts of things like how to handle criticism, how to make a good first impression, how to win people over to your way of thinking.
I'm especially curious about that last one. Persuasion without being pushy. I feel like that's a superpower these days.
Oh, for sure. We're bombarded with so much information and so many opinions that knowing how to communicate effectively and respectfully is more important than ever.
Definitely. Okay, so where do we start?
Well, Carnegie kicks things off with fundamental techniques in handling people.
Sounds like a good foundation.
And his very first principle is don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I feel like I'm guilty of breaking that rule all the time. It's so easy to get caught up in pointing out what's wrong, you know?
It is. But Carnegie argues that criticism is rarely effective. In fact, it often backfires.
I can see that. When someone criticizes me, my first instinct is to get defensive.
Exactly. It triggers that fight or flight response. It's like you're being attacked.
So how do we deal with difficult situations or behavior without resorting to criticism?
That's where Carnegie's next principle comes in. Become genuinely interested in other people.
So instead of focusing on what's wrong with someone, we should focus on trying to understand them.
Precisely. It's about shifting our perspective from me to you.
I can see how that would make a big difference in how we approach interactions.
It totally does. And it's not about being fake or pretending to care when you don't. It's about cultivating a genuine curiosity about the people around you.
It's about wanting to learn more about them, to see the world through their eyes.
Exactly. And when you do that, you start to build connections and understand where they're coming from.
And it makes it easier to communicate effectively, right?
Absolutely. Because you're not just talking at someone, you're actually engaging with them on a deeper level.
That reminds me of that story about Jim Farley, the politician who was known for remembering everyone's name.
Oh, yeah, he was incredible. He knew the names of thousands of people, even like mechanics he'd only met once.
I know, it seems like such a small thing, but it obviously made a huge impact on people.
Because it made them feel seen and valued,
Yeah.
like they mattered.
Exactly. And it all ties back to that idea of being genuinely interested in others.
It all comes down to that, really, making people feel important.
Which brings us to Carnegie's third principle. Make people feel important and do it sincerely.
That's a big one. And it goes beyond just remembering names. It's about recognizing the inherent worth of every individual.
So it's about treating everyone with respect, regardless of their position or status.
Absolutely. Carnegie believed that everyone, from the CEO to the janitor, has a deep-seated need to feel significant.
And when you make someone feel important, you create a positive connection, right?
You nailed it. It builds trust, rapport, and goodwill.
Like if someone makes you feel good about yourself, you're more likely to want to be around them.
Exactly. Carnegie tells this story about Charles Schwab, the steel magnate, who attributed his success to his $1 million smile.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that. It wasn't just about being physically attractive though, was it?
Nope. It was about radiating warmth, enthusiasm, and genuine liking for the people he encountered.
It's like he made people feel good just by being around him.
Exactly. And that's a powerful quality to cultivate. It makes you more approachable, likable, and influential.
So we've got don't criticize, be genuinely interested in others, and make people feel important. What's next?
Well, all of those principles tie into Carnegie's fourth point, being a good conversationalist.
Okay, so what's the secret to being a good conversationalist? Is it all about being witty and charming?
Not necessarily. In fact, Carnegie argues that being a good listener is far more important than being a brilliant talker.
That makes sense. I think we often get so caught up in trying to impress others with our own knowledge or experiences that we forget to truly listen to what they have to say.
It's a common trap. We want to be seen as interesting and knowledgeable, so we end up dominating the conversation. But really, people are more drawn to those who make them feel heard and understood.
I know I feel most comfortable and connected with people who genuinely listen to me and show a genuine interest in what I have to say.
It's a powerful feeling, isn't it, to feel like someone is truly present with you, hanging on your every word?
Totally. And that brings us back to the importance of being present and attentive in our interactions.
Yeah, instead of letting our minds wander or thinking about what we're going to say next.
It's about being fully engaged in the moment and giving the other person our undivided attention.
Which I think is becoming increasingly difficult in our hyper-connected world.
So true. We're constantly bombarded with distractions, our phones, social media, the news.
It's a real challenge to tune out all that noise and focus on the person in front of us.
It is, but it's a challenge worth embracing.
Definitely. Because when we truly listen, we create deeper connections, build trust, and unlock a world of understanding.
I love that. Unlocking a world of understanding.
It's like every conversation has the potential to be an adventure.
You just have to be open to it.
Exactly. So we covered some of the groundwork there, those fundamental techniques. But now we're going to move into the really fun stuff, part 2. 6 ways to make people like you.
Okay, let's hear them.
Heh.
I'm all about those actionable steps. Give me those tips.
All right, well, the first one is deceptively simple. Ready? Smile.
Smile. Seriously, that's it.
Yep, that's it. A genuine smile. It's like magic.
I mean, I get that a smile can make you seem more friendly, but does it really make that much of a difference?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Carnegie argues that a smile is like this instant connection builder. It makes you more approachable, more likable. Like, think about it. Who are you more drawn to? Someone who's frowning or someone who's smiling?
Yeah, fair point. I guess I'd rather talk to the smiler.
Right. And Carnegie tells the story about this stockbroker who decided to try it out. He just started smiling at everyone he met, customers, colleagues, everyone. And guess what?
What happened?
His whole life changed. He felt happier, his relationships improved, and his business even started booming.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, I know there's like a whole science behind how smiling can actually lift your mood, but I never thought about it in terms of like business success.
It makes sense though, right? If you're radiating positivity, people are going to be more receptive to you.
Yeah, I guess it's like that whole fake it till you make it thing.
Kind of. Even if you're not feeling super happy, the act of smiling can actually trick your brain into feeling a little bit better. And those good vibes, they rub off on other people too.
So it's like a win-win. You feel better and you make others feel better too.
Exactly. And that leads us right into the next technique. Remember and use names.
Okay, this one I struggle with. I'm terrible with names.
I get it. It's definitely a skill that takes practice, but it's so worth it.
Why is it so important? I mean, it's just a name, right?
Think about it. Your name is a core part of your identity. It's how you're known in the world.
Oh, okay, yeah. I guess it's pretty personal.
Very. So when someone remembers your name, it shows they've taken the time to see you as an individual, not just another face in the crowd.
Like they actually care.
Exactly. And Carnegie highlights Napoleon III, the French emperor. He actually had a system for remembering names. Like he would ask people to repeat themselves or even spell it out if he didn't catch it the first time.
Wow, that's dedication. I feel like I'd be too embarrassed to ask someone to repeat their name.
It's about prioritizing that connection. Remember that anecdote about Ken Nottingham and the lunch lady?
Oh, yeah. He turned her whole attitude around just by using her name.
Exactly. It's such a simple act, but it can have a huge impact.
Okay, so we've got smiling, remembering names. What else?
This one is super important. Be a good listener.
We already talked about that a little bit, didn't we?
We did, but it's so important that Carnegie brings it up again in this context.
Why is that?
Because good listening is at the heart of building strong relationships. It's about truly engaging with what someone's saying, not just waiting for your turn to talk.
Yeah, I think we're all guilty of that sometimes.
It's easy to get distracted or start formulating our response before the other person's even finished speaking.
So how do we become better listeners? Like, what are some practical tips?
Well, one thing is to try to really focus on what the other person is saying. Like, put your phone away, make eye contact, And really listen to their words. Don't interrupt or try to steer the conversation back to yourself.
It's about making them feel heard.
Exactly. Like their thoughts and feelings actually matter. And Carnegie tells this story about this sophisticated art dealer who was totally captivated by a visitor who simply listened intently as he spoke about his passion for art. No witty remarks, no trying to one-up him, just genuine interest and attention.
That's a great story. It shows that you don't need to be a brilliant conversationalist or have all the answers to connect with someone. Sometimes, all it takes is the willingness to listen.
It's true. And when you combine that active listening with talking in terms of the other person's interests, well, that's when the magic really happens.
So it's not just about listening. It's about showing that you're listening by talking about things they're interested in.
Exactly. Find that common ground. It's like that salesman who finally cracked the code with that hotel steward, remember?
Oh, yeah. The guy who could never get that bread order.
Yep. He was trying all these different sales tactics, but nothing was working. Then he discovered that the steward was super passionate about this organization called the Hotel Greeters of America.
So he changed his approach.
He did. Instead of focusing on the bread, he started talking about the greeters. He asked the steward about his experiences, his involvement, everything, and guess what?
He got the order.
He did. The steward was so impressed by his genuine interest that he placed a huge order for bread.
It's amazing how just shifting the focus from me to you can make such a difference.
It's all about meeting people where they are, finding that common ground, and building a genuine connection.
I like that. Okay, what's next?
Well, this one builds on what we've been talking about. Make the other person feel important and do it sincerely.
That sounds familiar.
It's a recurring theme for a reason.
Um,
It's so important.
So it's not just about flattery.
Nope. Flattery is cheap and easily spotted. It's about genuine appreciation, recognizing the good in others and acknowledging their contributions.
And that makes people feel good, right?
Absolutely makes them feel valued, respected, and appreciated. Carnegie tells this heartwarming story about this elderly woman who decided to give her Packard car to her nephew.
Her Packard, like her car.
Yep. And not because he was, expecting an inheritance or anything like that. It was because he genuinely showed interest in her and her beautiful home. He took the time to listen to her stories, admire her belongings, and make her feel like she was the most important person in the world.
Wow, that's so sweet. So she gave him her car just because he was kind to her.
Exactly. It's a powerful example of how a little bit of kindness and appreciation can go a long way.
Okay, I'm definitely going to try to be more mindful of that.
Mhm.
So we've got smiling, remembering names, being a good listener, talking in terms of the other person's interests, and making them feel important. What's the final ingredient in this recipe for likability?
This one might be the most important of all. Sincerity. All of these techniques, they're meaningless if they're not genuine.
Yeah, you can't just fake it.
Exactly. People can spot a phony a mile away.
It's like that saying, people may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Perfectly put. So yeah, sincerity is key. All of these techniques need to come from a place of genuine caring and respect. If you're just trying to manipulate people, it's going to backfire. True connection that's built on authenticity, being real, being yourself. That's what people are drawn to.
Okay, I'm ready for this. We talked about how to handle people, how to make them like you, but now I want to know, how do we actually get people on our side? How do we persuade them without being, pushy or manipulative?
Well, Carnegie has some pretty surprising advice on that front. In fact, his first principle in this section might throw you for a loop.
Oh, really? Lay it on me.
He says you can't win an argument.
Wait, what?
Huh?
You can't win an argument, but what about, debating skills and logic and all that?
It's not that those things don't matter. It's more about the ultimate goal. Like, if you're trying to actually change someone's mind, engaging in a heated argument is rarely the way to go.
I guess that makes sense. When I get into an argument with someone, it usually just makes both of us more dug into our positions.
Exactly. It becomes more about winning than understanding.
So what's the alternative? If we can't argue our way to victory, how do we get people to see our point of view?
Well, Carnegie's second principle kind of goes hand in hand with that first one, he says. Show respect for the other person's opinions. Never say, you're wrong.
Okay. But how do you disagree with someone without telling them they're wrong? That feels like a recipe for passive aggressiveness.
It's not about being passive-aggressive at all. It's about recognizing that everyone has their own perspective. And even if you don't agree with it, it's important to acknowledge and respect that.
So it's more about understanding where they're coming from.
Exactly. It's about having a conversation, not a battle.
Okay, I could see how that would create a more open and productive dialogue.
Right. It takes the defensiveness out of the equation. And then, if you do happen to be in the wrong,
Oh no, here comes the hard part.
it's not so bad, actually. Carnegie's third principle is pretty straightforward. If you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically.
Wow, so it's better to just own up to it.
It really is. It disarms the other person.
Yeah,
If you're willing to admit your mistakes, they're less likely to hold on to their anger or resentment.
that's interesting. It's like taking the power away from the situation.
Exactly. And it also builds trust. It shows that you're honest and accountable.
Okay, so we've got don't argue, respect other opinions, admit when you're wrong. What else you got?
Principle number 4, begin in a friendly way.
Okay, that one sounds pretty obvious.
Yeah,
But I'm guessing there's more to it than just slapping on a fake smile.
you got it. It's about genuine warmth and goodwill. It's about creating an atmosphere where people feel comfortable and open to hearing what you have to say.
So it's kind of like setting the stage for a positive interaction.
Exactly. And Carnegie has this great example of John D. Rockefeller, the oil tycoon. Well, he was dealing with a bunch of striking miners, a really tense situation.
Definitely sounds tense.
But instead of coming in with, threats or demands, he actually gave this really friendly and empathetic speech. He acknowledged the miners' concerns, emphasized their shared interests, and expressed a genuine desire to find a solution that worked for everyone.
Wow, so he basically disarmed them with kindness.
Exactly. And it worked. The miners were so taken aback by his approach that they actually ended up negotiating a settlement.
It's amazing how powerful a little bit of empathy can be.
It really is. And that ties into the next principle. Get the other person saying, yes, yes, immediately.
Oh, I like this one. It's all about momentum, right? Getting people nodding along.
You got it. It's about finding common ground and building agreement from the start.
So instead of jumping right into the points of disagreement, you start by highlighting the things you both agree on.
Exactly. And Carnegie actually recommends using a series of questions to guide the conversation in that direction, kind of like the Socratic method.
Oh yeah, where you lead someone to a conclusion through a series of questions.
Exactly. It's a really effective way to get people thinking and engaged without feeling like they're being lectured or pressured.
Okay, so we've covered starting friendly, finding common ground, and getting those yeses rolling. What's next?
This one's a real game changer. Ready? Let the other person do a great deal of the talking.
Oh, I love this one. It's all about active listening, right?
You got it. But it goes beyond just listening. It's about encouraging the other person to express themselves fully, to share their thoughts and feelings without interruption or judgment.
And why is that so important?
Because when people feel heard, they're more open to hearing what you have to say. It's like you're creating a space for mutual understanding.
I guess it also helps you gather information, right? The more they talk, the more you learn about their perspective.
Exactly. And Carnegie tells this story about this salesman who accidentally stumbled upon this principle.
Oh, what happened?
Well, he went to this big meeting to pitch this huge contract, but right before he went in, he lost his voice, like completely lost it. He couldn't even whisper.
Oh no, what does he do?
Well, he had no choice but to let the client do most of the talking. He just sat there, nodding along, asking a few clarifying questions here and there. And guess what?
He got the contract.
He did. The client felt so heard and understood that they were completely sold on the deal.
It's amazing how sometimes the less we talk, the more influential we become.
It's true. And it brings us to our final principle in this section. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view.
Okay, this one feels like the ultimate challenge. It's like putting yourself in someone else's shoes,
Right,
right?
exactly. It's about empathy, understanding, and the willingness to step outside of our own limited perspective.
It's about recognizing that everyone has their own unique experiences and motivations.
And that those experiences shape how they see the world.
It's about remembering that there's always more to the story than meets the eye.
Perfectly put. And that's really what this whole deep dive has been about, exploring those timeless principles of human interaction, understanding why they work, and figuring out how we can apply them to our own lives.
It's been an incredible journey. I feel like I've learned so much about how to connect with people, how to build relationships, and how to communicate more effectively.
Me too. And the beauty of Carnegie's work is that it's not just about techniques or strategies. It's about cultivating those qualities of character, kindness, empathy, respect, sincerity that make us better human beings.
I love that. So as we wrap up this deep dive, if there's one thing our listeners should take away from it, what would it be?
I would say it's the importance of shifting our focus from ourselves to others. It's about remembering that everyone, no matter who they are or where they come from, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect.
Beautifully said. And on that note, I think it's time to say goodbye. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. We hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as we did. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into ideas that matter. We'll see you next time.